Welcome to the WTS, a podcast about creative people. If you are a fan of the show, please consider becoming a WTS Plus member over at patreon.com/thewts. You'll get exclusive access to the video version of this recording, and I'll send you a couple of WTS stickers that you can stick on a local stop sign if you want. You can also help out the show by leaving a review over on Apple Podcasts, or if you're listening on Spotify, leave a 5-star rating. I was really happy to see this podcast trending in the visual arts category. That was pretty cool. It even reached number 1 on one episode. So thank you all for your support. Oh boy, I've been looking forward to this episode for a while now, especially since I decided to become a dedicated coffee snob about a couple years ago or so. You probably don't use that term in the industry, do you, Morgan?
I did at one point. I think I don't know if I view myself as a snob so much as just like an enthusiast. A hardcore enthusiast.
I guess a lot of people became kind of coffee home baristas, I guess we'd call them, during the pandemic. Huh?
Very much so.
Yeah, I think that's what got me involved. Morgan Eckroth is the reigning US Barista Champion who finished second in the 2022 World Barista Championship. Damn, so close.
So close, but so far.
This just illustrates the cutthroat reality of international coffee competition, doesn't it?
Very much so. It's I think it was a spread of about 30 points there at the end.
I'm detecting a little bit of shenanigans here. Okay, now where was the world competition held?
It was held in Australia.
And where was the winner from?
Australia.
Right?
There is I will say there is always historically like a little bit of a home court advantage, not from like a judging side, but just being able to sleep in your own bed shockingly does wonders for your performance.
Yeah, I guess you don't have that jet lag too, where you're hipped up on 20 cups of coffee from the flight over there. Once I discovered Morgan's videos on YouTube, I began to get more and more fascinated by the many layers of her work. Morgandrinkscoffee is a blend of real-world experience, practical advice, art, education, business, and pure entertainment, all revolving around coffee. And you'll learn about puck suckers, too. There's a lot to unpack here, and we'll get into the art of coffee brewing. And I'm looking forward to having this opportunity to ask an expert a number of questions I have about brewing the perfect cup of coffee at home. But like millions of other people, I think what I'm most enthralled by are Morgan's short-form videos. In a sea of angry videos, cynical videos, confrontational videos, thirst traps, those are my videos, reaction videos, endless clickbait, and short attention span noise, I can't stress enough how refreshing Morgan's videos are. These videos are brief vignettes creating simple, quiet, slice-of-life moments in a real coffee shop. Morgan sets up the camera and performs the roles of both barista and customer. They're anecdotal scenes that all seem to be created from a place of honesty and observation. In Morgan's world, a person forgets their wallet, so the barista covers their order. A customer asks another customer to watch their laptop while they use the restroom, and nothing is stolen. There's no punchlines, no gotcha twist endings, no hot takes or controversial opinions, but underlying them all, there's a gentle optimism, most likely reflecting how Morgan sees the world and humanity. She's completely turned the script on what the internet has taught us all to expect in a video. This is a completely fresh take on short-form content, and over 6 million of Morgan's followers on TikTok and over 1 million subscribers on YouTube probably agree. These are videos that can bring a smile to your face and sometimes a tear of emotion. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here. This is gonna be fun.
So do I need a puck sucker?
I don't think you need one. I'll tell you that much. Are they fun to have? Am I glad I have one? Yes. Would I recommend them to anyone else? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, but you know what I got to get is I got to get one of these the name is escaping me, the tamper thing where you get the puck out of the, what is it, knockbox. That's what
the
I'm looking
knockbox.
for.
Yes, those are nice to have.
Yeah, I've been making the espresso, but I'm like having to figure out different ways of getting it out of there, and I'm like burning my fingers.
You're starting down the rabbit hole of home espresso, which you never fully recover from.
Yeah, you're gonna have to set me straight on a lot of this stuff. But you know what I've been doing is, and you probably have the same thing. Portland Portland is one of those coffee places, right?
Oh, every single corner has a cafe.
You got Portland, Seattle, San Francisco. These are and so I'm happy to be in one of those three here in San Francisco. And so you know what I've been doing is I've been going around, I've been trying to hit as many independent coffee shops as I can in the city, and just kind of what I'm doing is I'm rating them, just mentally rating them on not the coffee so much, but the vibe.
That's the way to do it. That's the way
what a coffee shop is.
It is very much a large component. I mean, serving great coffee is always very important, but that's kind of like the baseline. There's so many other categories that come into play with a cafe.
There's this place over in North Beach, got probably the most expensive real estate in the city, but it's just called Hole in the Wall Coffee, and it's literally a hole in the wall because it's about a 4-foot wide hole cut in the wall with a door on one side, and it's got 2 wooden panels on it, and it's only open, for a certain amount of hours in the morning, and then maybe into the afternoon.
Sure.
There's no sign on this at all.
If you know.
You got to know the thing. And they open it up, then they put some signs up, and they have a little table they'll set out front, and the line just stretches down the street for this place.
I love that so much. That's kind of from a barista's perspective, that's kind of like the ideal setup right there.
Yeah. My son's a barista. He wants to open his own coffee shop one day. That would be like his dream. I'm like, yeah, man, go for it.
You're like, I get free coffee when I come in, right?
So I just learned because of you about coffee competition, barista competitions.
Yeah.
Spell this out for me. How did this all come about, and how did you get involved in it?
It's a weird niche little sporty barista world out there. It's super fun. The US Barista Championship has been around since I want to say the very early 2000s. It is a competition that happens on a national level, and then it's also an international competition. So there are, I believe, depending on the year, but I believe right now there is between 35 and 50 countries around the world that compete in this and have essentially the exact same format as what we do in the US. But what the competition structure is it's a 15-minute routine. It's a very highly prepared and rehearsed routine. During it, you as the competitor have a thesis or a script that you're conveying to your judges, and you are serving them 3 different courses during that 15 minutes. So you have an espresso course, which is just straight up espresso. You have a milk course, which is just milk and espresso in some sort of proportion that you've decided on.
Like a latte or something.
Yeah, like a latte or cappuccino or whatever it tastes best with your coffee. And then you also have what's called the signature beverage, which is your showstopper. You basically have full creative freedom with that. And so you're serving a panel of what they call sensory judges who are tasting the coffee. And then you also have what are called technical judges. So if you've seen any barista routines, you'll notice there are people in outfits kind of hovering very closely behind the competitors. They are watching for things like cleanliness and workflow and technique. And so all of these scores come together to make up your final score. And a majority of where the points come from is as you are serving the judges these drinks, you are describing both the taste experience and then also the tactile experience. So what the coffee is going to feel like in the mouth. And the judges are grading based on the accuracy of what you've told them versus what they're experiencing. And there's a whole lot of other nitty gritty stuff, but that's kind of the overview of it.
There's a real performative aspect to this too.
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched a video you did. I guess it was a video was it from the US competition?
Yes. Yeah. I believe the US competition is on my channel right now.
Where you made I guess, was this your signature drink that you made or in that one?
Yes.
Was that your full 3-course meal?
I've done, so there is, I do have a posting of my full, like, the 3-course meal on YouTube, but I also did videos breaking down both of my signature beverages. I did different ones for the US competition, and I did a separate one for the world competition. Right. They're fun beverages for sure.
So describe your that third one. This is like this is your drink, right? You invented it.
I did. I made this drink all by myself.
And what do you call it?
Yeah, so I didn't actually come up with a name. I should have for both of mine.
It's the Morgan.
Sure, let's go with that. I like it. It's perfect. So
I'm going to ask for a Morgan the next time I go to Hole in the Wall.
Good luck. Let me know what you come back with. So I'll tell you actually about the one I did for the World Barista Championship, because that was like one of my all-time favorite signature beverages I've ever done. It was kind of a take essentially on like a coffee cream soda. We knew we wanted to make something. We started out with like being like, we wanted to make a drink that was cold. We had this idea that it would be really fun to carbonate a coffee drink. But just carbonated coffee isn't that like interesting of a texture or a flavor, and so we experimented with adding like a fat. So we added like what is essentially like a heavy whipping cream to it. We carbonated it. It had a couple different kind of like citrus and really acidic juices in it. So it was very, very bright. It had like a really rich like sweetness to it, and it was just this like fun, like sparkling, like just coffee cream soda, and it was totally delicious.
And so then your other two drinks that you do, you said you start out with just basically like an espresso or something.
They're pretty traditional drinks. So you have your espresso, which is of course dialed into the coffee that you're serving, just tasting the absolute best. And then you also have your milk drink. And I've always done pretty small milk drinks. So I usually do what's kind of considered like a cortado size. So the ending drink is like about 4 ounces. It's about 1.5 ounces of espresso, and then like 2.5-3 ounces of milk. So a pretty small drink.
Take me back to how you got involved in this, because you've been working as a barista at the same coffee shop?
2 actually. I grew up about an hour and a half south of where I live now. I grew up in Corvallis, Oregon, and I started working as a barista at a little coffee shop called Tried and True down there. That was when I was 18, I believe. I was like just halfway through my freshman year of college. So it was like working part-time, in school full-time. And then after I graduated college.
What were you studying at school?
Marketing. I was in business school. So I did that, and then I moved up to Portland about 2.5 years ago, where I started working at a cafe called Keeper up here. So I've had 2 different ones in the past. But I got started in competition back when I'd barely been a barista for I think like a year, maybe a year and a half. I'd always been really competitive. Like growing up, I played a lot of sports, and like I've always been involved in like performing arts and really loved that. And so when I became a barista and realized I loved that job, and I like stumbled upon the fact that there were barista competitions, and it was just like this perfect blend of like everything I wanted to do. And so I talked to my boss at the time about it, and him and his wife had been baristas for a long time, and they had actually competed in this competition like years ago. And so they were like, that's awesome that you want to do this. Like it was really incredible. They were like, we'll support you if you want to try this out. And so I think. Did
they help coach you?
They did, yes. So they helped coach me. They helped like sponsor like my coffee and like travel, which is really, it's a huge financial component of it, which I'm forever grateful for. But I think it was
Do they have a big sign on the shop now that says home of the US champion right here?
It's been a long time since I've been back there, so I'm not totally sure.
Oh, they should.
But I competed for the first time. I want to say it was either very late 2018, going into like the 2019 season. And the first time I did it, I was like, oh, I'm not getting out of this anytime soon. Like it was like one of those moments where I was like, I'm hooked. I have to keep doing this until something happens.
Until you win.
Apparently.
Yeah. So where's this year's world competition?
Yeah. So this year's world competition is actually happening in Athens, Greece. Oh, nice. And then the US level of it is happening in Portland. And I am.
See, you got that home field advantage now.
I am looped back into this. I'm throwing myself back into the fire and competing again.
Yeah. Do you know all the competitors?
I know a good portion of them. I think one of the really cool things about this competition is you start to see familiar faces. Like the specialty coffee industry is very interconnected. And so I am friends with a lot of people competing. And so it turns into this fun kind of like, we're all in this together because we're not directly competing with each other. It's very much an isolated performance.
Oh, interesting. So you don't have somebody going around trying to whack you in the knee or something to take you out of the competition.
No, thankfully that is not the energy that happens backstage.
And are you still working in a coffee shop?
I am.
The ones in your videos is
yes,
where you work.
Yeah, I actively work there as a barista. I am on the floor less than I used to be, but I still work part-time as a barista.
And would you shoot your videos like before it opens or something?
Yeah, I'm getting in about an hour and a half before my opening shift starts usually. Either that or after closing.
Yeah, and I really want to get into this because the videos, like I mentioned in the intro, are really special. And I think a lot of people are starting to see that. It feels like, I don't know, it feels like almost you're ushering in a new era of what a video can be.
Well, that means a lot.
I mean, you could see a lot of the comments say, oh, this is so wholesome. And for a long time, that has become like this kind of a word that means, oh, it's going to be boring or it's going to be not for me. I've got to have this edginess to it. But after watching your videos, you see, oh, this is almost like just these little slice of life moments that are just so special. It's hard to describe those. How did you come about with this format, and how do you describe those videos? I've
been making TikTok videos for about 4 years now. Like I've been on there since like early 2019, and I've been doing barista. I just call them like sketches. They're vignettes or sketches. Like I've been doing that type of content since the beginning. And starting out, I definitely hit a lot more of that kind of like the edgier content. Like it was always kind of like there was always a little element of like the barista versus the customer. You know? And I always was very conscious of kind of the tone my videos took. My goal even back then when they were like a little bit, I guess, more like humor based. Like the point was that there's like a punchline at the end. Even at that point, I was pretty aware of like kind of the expectation I was setting with my tone. And I always did my best to kind of take them in more of a satirical way. Like they were never really real situations that happened, just because I didn't want it to be like, I don't want to like call out people. Like I still wanted to convey that I enjoyed this job. But I kind of stumbled on this different style of video, this more like calming, like slice of life, a couple months ago. And it really truly was kind of out of a sense of like, I needed to do something different creatively. Like I was kind of burning out on this like style I'd been doing for so long. And I wanted to do something different. And what kind of drove me to create what I'm doing now and what really remains kind of like the ethos behind it is the fact that I just really, really love hospitality in my job. Like the just simply as a barista working behind the bar, like it's kind of our role to create this like safe, comfortable space for people. Like I love the idea of like the cafe existing as like this third place that's not work, it's not home. It's this like place where everyone can kind of mingle and like take their time and just be comfortable in. And that's very important to me in my job as a barista. And so I wanted to see if I was able to replicate that at all online. Like if I was able to capture just a little bit of that like essence of the cafe in something that could live online. And so that's what is always kind of my goal nowadays with my content.
Yeah, I mean, because there's plenty of types of videos of people with the customer versus the retail employee. And, it comes down to like the Karen videos that became so popular a couple of years ago. It's like, oh, another customer being obnoxious or something. But that doesn't happen in your world. It's interesting that those perform so well, really, because we've been taught that controversy for so long on the internet just performs well and does clicks. But here you're a testament to the complete opposite of that.
I think a little bit of it is like the timing of it. I think right now, especially on TikTok, like with it kind of reaching like a maturity at this point with how
is TikTok just a cesspool?
It's definitely changed. I'll say that much. I feel like I'm allowed to say that, having been on it since like its birth. Like it's it's shifted. The content has shifted. You know, people have like figured out the formulas for like what performs and like how to grab attention in like 1 second or less, which is like what everyone says. And so I think a reason that the content I'm making now is kind of hitting the way it is now is because I think TikTok's in this kind of interest and like short form video just in general, honestly, because it's all kind of the same
you do
nowadays.
these over on Instagram.
Yeah, like everyone is cross posting, so they all turn into kind of the same platform. But I think we're kind of in this like weird in-between phase on TikTok where it's like there's a lot of just like overconsumption. There's a lot of just like this energy of like you have to have this edge to get like your attention. You have to say something controversial at the front so people like stay engaged and like all this stuff. And I think that is so much of the content online that it's just like it can be a breath of fresh air to scroll and not immediately be like bombarded with like a flashy first sentence or like, you know, like a polarizing statement, like something where you can just like rest for a second in your scrolling journey.
It is. It's a respite for like 60 seconds. I get to watch a Morgan video and you know when they're coming through your feed because you've established this look. You're always wearing black. We all know the coffee shop. I wore black today, but
thank you.
I always wear black too.
So it's not everyone asks if it's like a bit, if the turtleneck thing is like a joke. And I'm like, it maybe started out that way, but not anymore.
I often show your videos to friends. I've been basically showing them to everybody. I'm like, you gotta see this.
Lot.
And you know what? The first reaction, I'll show them one video and they'll watch it. And at the end of it, they'll say, I don't get it. Yep. I'm like, what? There's nothing to get. What you're trying to get here
That's kind of my favorite part of it.
Yeah, I like that it's like cinema verite. This is like real life that you're kind of just exposing these short little moments. Sometimes though, you have moments of, I think, real emotion there. You had one recently about a regular who becomes a friend and then just stops coming. And I think, well, that probably happens a lot.
Yep. They're all, I think that's like kind of the wonderful thing about them is that they're all very based in truth. Like I'm not creating like, I'm not like making up these scenarios. Like I've been working as a barista for like 6 years now. And it's like, these are just things that I see on a regular basis. And I think they're things that we can all relate to either as someone who's worked in service and has like experienced these things ourselves in like the like barista role or like as a customer. Like I'm sure there's been a time in many people's lives when they've had like a regular place they've gone to and then maybe they've moved or like something has changed in their life where they've stopped going there. And it's just like, it's such like these little like human interactions I think are really special to just kind of like highlight sometimes.
Yeah, I like the one you recently did a couple. You played a child, like down on your knees.
Oh yeah.
You made a little cow or a little cat. Yep. And it was so cute.
Yep. Oh man, I will say the videos where I act as like a little, like it's like a little kid, it's like essentially like a toddler. Right. The videos where I do that, everyone loves it, and to this day, like most things I understand. Like I like understand why things do well. I don't understand why me being like, you know, like 3 foot tall and like speaking in like jolted sentences online like does well. That still is so confusing to me, but I'm glad they enjoyed the little kid version in the cafe.
And how did you decide to have your videos silent? Is that because TikTok sort of, a lot of people watch it without sound?
It was kind of that in the beginning. So that has always been kind of my format online. Back in the very early days of TikTok, like when I was starting, I had like 0 video editing experience at all. And so I was relying entirely on like TikTok's like native like editing and like video camera and like all that stuff. And so at the time, it was way easier to film things and to like kind of edit them together as I filmed when using an audio on top. And so by doing that, it automatically meant I couldn't speak. And so I would do text on top. And so I started with that. And then there became a point where my like editing skills got to the point where I was like, I could edit these in a different way. And I decided not to. I think there's a couple reasons for that. And number one, I like the fact that you can watch my videos without sound. Like if you don't need to, I think the sound helps.
They're so enhanced by the music.
Yeah, they're enhanced by the music, but you can grasp the videos without it. I think that's a really great thing. I think it makes them a little bit more accessible too, which I like. But on top of that, I really have leaned into this like idea that my videos, I try to make them like as neutral as possible. Like I wear this like very basic like neutral outfit. I like to describe it as like all my characters are like essentially like gender neutral. Like I like never use like any pronouns or like any like specific like gendered pronouns in my videos. Like I don't speak in them, so you're not hearing my voice. And so like my goal with that is to make them kind of this like blank slate where you can see yourself as either character, like no matter who you are. And so that's been really intentional. And I think the music has helped with that because it's a lot more easy to kind of like empathize and attach to music than it is to like someone's voice if it's not similar to your own.
Yeah. I can identify with all of those characters in some way. It's really interesting the way you do that. Same with like there was the video, I think I mentioned it in the opening, where a customer forgets their wallet. You've already made the drink for them. And you're like, no, it's all right. I've got you covered. And, you know, the natural conclusion that we would expect is that the customer comes back the next day and does it again, keeps doing the same thing. But it's not the case. He's just like, thanks.
Just an honest mistake, you know?
And that
it's like,
happens in most independent places will do that. They will... you know, and I don't think people are prone to abusing that privilege. It's just like, oh man, I forgot my wallet. No, it's fine.
I think it's about like showing just like very like human kindness. I think you don't see that online as much as I wish you'd see it. You know, I think it's really nice to take a break from kind of like the loud, abrasive, like online voice that happens a lot today.
Are people coming up to the coffee shop to see you now?
They do occasionally. It's always so special, you know. I think it's really cool to have a job, because I mean, to me, like my online work is like a job nowadays. And it's really cool to have a job where you can make stuff that people identify with and like want to talk to you about. I think that's a really, really cool thing to be able to do. And so it's always such a treat to be able to meet people.
How does the owners or the management of the coffee shop feel about you doing that? Clearly they like it, right?
Yeah, they're super supportive. So when I interviewed essentially and applied at the current coffee shop I work at, I was really forthcoming. I was like, hey, I really want to be a barista at your shop. Like, I love what you're doing. I do have this other thing that I do that might
6 million people might be watching.
Yeah, that
shop.
might come up once in a while. I was like, I was really clear initially. I was like, I am not here to be like anything special. I was like, I literally just want to be a barista because I love doing it. I want to clock in and out. However, when I'm not clocked in, I do want to film these videos if that's all right. And so we were both completely on the same page. You know, I really do the best that I can to make sure my like online job doesn't interfere with anything that happens in the cafe as much as possible. And so so far it's worked out really well. And, you know, I think it's just a matter of like communication kind of on all fronts about what's going on. Yeah.
And do you feel a certain pressure now to get the videos out, you know, in a timely manner, and how you're making the videos and what you're going to do next, and how much pressure do you put on yourself?
I do. I do put a lot of pressure on myself. I will say that much. But thankfully, with having done this for so long, I've kind of like figured out my formula. Like, I know approximately how many videos I can like back film, you know, in a single day. I know roughly the cadence of how I like to bring out videos. I think the main thing that I feel pressure on is just kind of like maintaining a sense of creativity and like interest in what I'm doing. You know, I mentioned earlier that I kind of burned out on this like format of like kind of like jokier, you know, a little bit edgier, we'll call it, content. And so that was kind of like a tough point, because I was like, as an internet creator who you're basically just self-employed to yourself, I was like, oh shoot, is this the end? Like I had this very dramatic moment of like, do I have no creativity left? And so I think a lot of the pressure is just kind of making sure that I'm maintaining a pace that is both makes sense for kind of like the internet and like the algorithms and like all this stuff, but also maintaining a pace where this job is sustainable for me, because I want to keep doing it, but I want to make sure I don't kind of run myself into the ground in chase of like constant virality, because I don't think that does anyone any benefit, you know?
Well, we should mention that you also, and this probably happened when you came over to YouTube also, is that you create a lot of long form content now.
I do.
Which is yet another layer of Morgandrinkscoffee because I like watching both your types of videos for completely different reasons.
They're very different. Yeah.
It's interesting. Do you find that you have like two just distinct audiences, or is there a lot of crossover, or is there any way of telling?
Yeah, they are. So it's kind of interesting. So when I started out on YouTube, I started YouTube very early 2020, like prior to the pandemic. And at that time, I want to say I had between 1.5 and 2 million followers on TikTok. And so I think a lot of people's like natural like thoughts were like, well, you've already built this huge base on TikTok. Start YouTube, you'll do like great. Like you'll port everyone over and you'll just have the same audience. And that's very much not what happened. No.
TikTok and YouTube, those audiences
they're very different ecosystems. Yeah. So when I started on YouTube, I had a little bit of a bump. You know, there were some followers that kind of followed between platforms, but really I was like starting from scratch on YouTube. And so I developed a very, very different audience on there. And that's also in part because the content is different. Like my long form content is much more like education and like gear review and like drink making and like advice. And I'm speaking out loud, and it's different content. And so I grew two very, very different audiences, both in like size and demographic. Nowadays, there is more crossover. They're a little bit more homogenized just because of the introduction of YouTube Shorts. That has begun to capture like people who watch short form content versus long form content. And so now my subscriber number is like this kind of weird blend. Like about half of my audience is there to just watch long form content. And then about half of my audience on YouTube is there just to watch short form content. And so it's these two now distinctly different audiences under one subscriber number, which is kind of an interesting thing that YouTube has created, for better or for worse.
Do you like making the long form videos?
I do. It's a different type of like, I guess like creative thing to do. And so it like kind of tickles a different part of my brain. And so it's nice because I feel like usually it ends up when I run out of ideas for like short form content, usually I'll be able to come up with ideas for long form content. So they kind of like supplement each other. Like I'm able to bounce between the two, which makes it a lot just more viable for me to be able to continually do both.
Yeah, and for anybody who wants to learn how to make coffee, these are really the videos you want to watch because you cover everything of how to brew certain types of coffees and certain drinks, as well as kind of the gear and all the equipment and all the junk that goes along with it that's taking over my kitchen right now.
So much. There's you'll never reach the end too. Like
yeah. Well, see, you know, I got an espresso machine and I thought, oh, this is good. I'll just make my own because I've been a coffee drinker for my entire life, but not like a coffee enthusiast. I won't say snob because I don't know enough about it to really be.
No one does. That's the secret.
Not knowing enough about it makes me the snob because I think I know a lot, but I don't. So I've always drank coffee, but I've never. It's just been like I was pound down a cup of coffee, and it's just a thing. You know, you would get that and. There, I think it was probably somewhere in the 90s is when kind of coffee culture really started to take hold. And so then when I would go out and order a drink, I would start experimenting with all these different drinks. But it was only recently when I started making this stuff at home. And it's hard for me to capture the flavor and the exact drinks that I can order at a coffee shop. So I know I'm doing a lot of things wrong, but I guess I'm having fun doing it.
This is the eternal struggle. You know, the minute you buy a home espresso machine, it's like you can't look back. I think it's all like all of us are chasing that one like perfect cup of coffee we've had in our lives, and we're like, how do we recreate this? And it's this constant struggle of like some days you'll make stuff that tastes super, super good, and then you'll do the exact same things the next day, and it'll be the exact opposite.
You know what I started doing is this year, it was a New Year's resolution, and I'm still sticking to it, is I have an afternoon, around 2 or so afternoon coffee break where I brew up a double shot of espresso. But here's the thing, is I thought I'll do this, but I found myself, I would sit down, how long does it take to drink an espresso? 5 minutes or something, 10 minutes? Yeah. after it was done, I don't even remember drinking it because I was sitting there looking at my phone. I was looking at Instagram. I'm doing all this other crap. And then it hit me. It's like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. So I started brewing this espresso, and the idea is I have to sit in my own thoughts. I can't have
just
any
marinate
phone.
in your own brain while you drink this.
Just to think, and it's such an enjoyable experience. I gotta say,
awesome.
It's just
that is lovely.
Be in my own head without all of these constant distractions.
Yep. Coffee's a special thing. And espresso too is like, it's one of those like acquired tastes where like, I don't expect anyone to like espresso like off the bat. It is a very like,
it's a ridiculous
like
drink.
it is a ridiculous drink. But it like has these like intricacies to it that once you've kind of acquired the taste for coffee, like you can kind of start to appreciate like, it's like in the barista competition. I mean, we go so deep into this with like describing these coffees where it's like you're giving the judges these coffees and you're telling them you're going to have like, you're going to taste lemon on like the front of it. And then it's going to have like a brown sugar sweetness.
It's like wine tasting, isn't it? It's like a sommelier.
Exactly. Yep. It's exactly like wine tasting. And so it's this really cool practice that you can get into with like tasting things intentionally. And that's what I've always like told people to do like online. I'm like, if you want to learn to like this, I'm like, just kind of sit with it. Like think about every single thing that is happening in your mouth and that you're experiencing while you're tasting it. And that'll set you down the right road for sure. I
guess to really experience coffee, do you need to really taste espresso to get the actual experience of coffee and the flavors to taste, to do those flavor nuances, or is just brewing up a cup of coffee fine?
You can do it just with a cup of coffee too. I mean, everyone kind of has their preferences between whether they prefer like a filter or like a drip coffee versus espresso. And honestly, like coffees will express themselves so differently, like depending on how you brew it too. And that's like one of the really cool things is like have a coffee and like brew it as like a pour over or just like a drip coffee, and then also make it as an espresso and like taste them side by side and see if you can like find similarities. But more often than not, you'll find like different flavors, and it's really cool that came out of like the exact same bean.
Do you have to use dark roast for espresso, or is that my imagination?
No, you can use whatever you like. I am pretty hardcore towards like the lighter side of coffee roasting. My preference like personally lies towards pretty light roasts. Coffees extract really differently depending on roast profile. So how you prepare a dark roast is probably different than how you're going to prepare like a light roast. But you can brew whatever you like in whatever way you like.
Tell me if I'm wrong about this.
Yeah.
That there is more caffeine in a light roast than a dark roast. Is that true?
That is correct.
People always have that backward, don't they?
It seems because a lot of it is like that flavor perception of like dark roasts have that they're, I mean, for lack of a better word, they are roastier. They will have more of that like traditional, like strong, like people describe themselves as wanting like a strong cup of coffee. And usually what they mean is they want a darker roast that's more robust and like punchy and like bitter is usually what they're looking for. And they associate that bitterness with like, oh, it must be like super strong and have lots of caffeine. Whereas that's not true. That's just a component of how much roasting has gone through. The more roast time that occurs, the more caffeine you're losing. So super light roasts will have significantly more than anything on the darker side.
So if you want that jolt in the morning, get the light roast.
Exactly.
Yeah. Lately, I've been making cappuccino. So this is kind of currently my drink of choice is a cappuccino. And damn, I cannot get it exactly right. And what am I doing wrong? Okay, I guess the problem is
let's start with what you're doing.
Okay, yeah, I know. That was a pretty open-ended question there. Tell me, fix me, Morgan, fix me. Okay, so I guess that my biggest problem is that it usually tastes like the espresso part of it is a little too bitter.
Okay, fair enough.
And I use oat milk. I really like oat milk.
I like oat milk too.
But I also wonder if a lot of this comes down to the espresso machine I got not being like good enough, or if it's just an excuse. It's Lagani. Is that how you say it?
Sure. Yeah.
And it's like middle of the road thing.
Yeah. I think more often than not, it's about finding the coffee that you like. I think kind of and I don't know if I like help feed into this, I think potentially, but it's like your gear is a tool to use, but it's not the most important component. A lot of people will go out and buy like crazy expensive espresso machines and then be like really frustrated that their coffee doesn't taste good.
It's love is the most important component.
Love and technique. And it's like, well, you got like the Ferrari of espresso machines, but you're not putting the right gas in it, like you're not keeping it clean, like there's like all this technique stuff that goes into it. And so I would say mess around with different like types of coffee or different roast levels, and
the proportion of milk
and the proportion
to
too
coffee.
Usually I like doing, for my cappuccinos, I like doing like a double shot of espresso, so it ends up being about about 35, 40 like milliliters or grams.
See, I think I should probably be weighing this stuff, shouldn't I?
Ooh, that's a good start. That will help. That will, at the very least, it'll help consistency. So you'll be able to see what you're doing each day. And then if you have an espresso you really, really like, you'll at least have the measurement. So the next day when you go back, you can do that again and see if it still tastes good.
Because I've been filling up the little basket thing just to like almost, and then pounding it down with the tamper. I
think honestly that would be a good place to start, is just like weighing your coffee, like what you put in and then how much you're taking out. And that allows you to at least track what you're doing, and then you can make changes and see how those changes affect the flavor. I think that would be like a really good start.
I think I came up with a coffee hack. I don't know if this is true or not. It's probably not. Is the Americano, I think. Because if you go to a coffee house and order like just the coffee of the day or whatever, it's coming straight out of the machine, right?
Coming out of the air pot, yep.
It's just like the brewer. It's like Mr. Coffee.
Yes,
but better.
A very expensive,
But if you order an Americano, they got to make an espresso. It's just espresso with water. And you get like, I think it's a fresher, better cup of coffee.
Sure. It's a different kind of cup of coffee. You know, as I think Americanos will have a lot more like kind of perceived like acidity to them, because espresso in general is like, you'll taste that as being more acidic than just a cup of coffee. And so that's a different flavor. And a lot of people prefer that over like a cup of brewed coffee.
Do you ever just order, if you go to like a diner or something, or we just pass, if you just notice that they've got this like that standard industrial coffee maker that's been there since 1950?
Diner coffee is the best, because you get it and then you like load it up with cream and sugar and it's so cozy and it's like in the mug. It's a great experience.
That's like hardcore. That's like blue collar coffee right there.
We've come full circle.
Yeah. You know what I don't like, and this is... Well, this is why I'm self-describing myself as a coffee snob, because now if I can like walk into a Starbucks, I'm like, ugh, Starbucks. You know, that's my snobbery coming out. But the thing about Starbucks is their PSLs, the pumpkin spice latte that everybody seems to love, and they come out with every year. And I like a pumpkin spice latte for about the first 4 sips. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happens.
You're done with it.
Oh, this is great. And then I'm like, oh God, this is awful. It goes from like 0 to 60 in a second.
That's hilarious.
I don't know what it is about that, but
that's really funny. I will say I'm a sucker for like a pumpkin spice latte. I have to have like, I'm a huge fan of like all coffee drinks, so it really depends on my mood. I drink black coffee, I drink espresso, but I also really like mochas and like sweet drinks and all this stuff. And so usually I will have like one pumpkin spice latte in like the fall season, like it just has to happen. And then in the winter we get into like the peppermint mocha season. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have like at least one peppermint mocha and just kind of indulge once in a while. Do you have like a go-to coffee drink if you go to a cafe? I'll say if it's my first time in a cafe, what I'll get is a cappuccino. I think it's a small enough drink where you'll still be able to like taste the coffee. But it's also like you get a good idea of like how they steam their milk, and like that's a component of it as well. So I think a cappuccino is like a good kind of like, is that
a good way to judge a coffee shop on your first?
I would say so. I think it involves enough like different levels of, it involves enough different techniques that you'll be able to get a good grasp on like, first of all, how they're extracting their espresso, whether you like the way they extract their espresso, and then also like the quality of their milk steaming. And then from there you can kind of move up or down with maybe more milk in a latte or something, or you could move down to like an espresso or something like that.
So I was at there's this place in the Haight called Flywheel Coffee. It's really cool. It's this really industrial looking place, and they roast their own beans and, you know, the whole thing.
Yep.
There's always a line going out there. So, but they've got these, is it siphon? Is that what it's called? They look like a bong or something.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
like,
That's a siphon.
and it was so cool. But there was this line, and then I was like, I'm going to ask them about that. And then I got up, and then I got cold feet, and I chickened out because there was a line behind me. There were firefighters. There were firefighters behind me who parked their truck across the street, and I'm like, I don't want to hold up this
How
line.
could I possibly hold it up with a siphon coffee over all this?
There could be a fire someplace that these guys need to get to. So I'm like, I'll take an Americano. What's the deal with these siphon coffees?
Siphon brewers are super interesting. You don't see them that much in cafes anymore, so it's really cool that you've seen some. They have been around for a super long time. It's a method of like immersion brewing. And so what that means is you have your coffee, your ground coffee, and you have it in the base, and then you pour your water in, and all of the water saturates all of the coffee before those two pieces are separated out into a final drink. And so in that way, it's a similar brewing method to like a French press, because it's just water and coffee. You just brew it like you brew tea, and then you strain it out. Siphon brewing uses a lot of like physics for how it works. It is a method of brewing that doesn't have a ton of control to it, because it's kind of like once you stick everything together and bring it to temperature, like it kind of just does its own thing via physics. And so that's why you won't see it in a lot of cafes, just because there's not a lot of like control over the taste and just
so it's more because it's cool to watch it do its thing.
It's really cool to watch. It's a really, really cool thing to mess around with at home. But like in terms of like consistency, there's kind of like a little bit of a gap there that makes it really tricky to implement. They're also not fun to clean, I will tell you that much, having cleaned many a siphon in my time.
Well, all those little tubes.
All the little glass beakers. And I've also shattered quite a few siphons in my time.
No. What's the best way to order just a cup of coffee? Would it be a pour over? I mean, and I know that kind of is a generic term, right?
Yeah.
But there's a place, Santa Cruz Coffee Roasters in Santa Cruz has they have them all lined up there, and then they pour them.
Yes, yeah, that would be a pour over. So I think if you are looking for a cup of black coffee, definitely the safest way to ask is just ask for like a filter coffee, meaning coffee that has been brewed through a filter. And so that will encapsulate drip coffee. It also could encapsulate pour overs. Pour overs are kind of a different thing from drip coffee. Drip coffee is usually automated. So it's those huge like batch brewers where you get like 2 to 3 liters of coffee, and then you're just like working through that for the customers. Whereas pour overs are much smaller portions. They're usually singular portions, and they're usually hand brewed as well. And so that's one of those drinks that's like, usually if a cafe is serving a pour over, they will save kind of their nicer coffees for the pour over, because you get a lot more like control over it. Like you got your barista there, like really preparing the coffee. Pour overs will sometimes express like a different flavor profile than drip coffee. Like usually drip coffee kind of tastes, this is a very generalized statement, I'm like trying to be careful here. Usually drip coffee will be a little bit more of like a traditional coffee experience, whereas pour overs often can taste a little bit lighter perhaps. They have a different like mouth feel to them. And so some people really, really don't like pour overs, but they like drip coffee, and it goes vice versa. But usually asking for a filter coffee is like a pretty safe way to get you a drip coffee no matter where you are in the world.
Do you ever drink have you ever tried the instant coffees? Is there a good instant coffee, or is that?
That's actually one of the really cool things nowadays, is that there's like kind of this advent in the last like 5 to 7 years, I'd say, maybe a little bit longer, but like of taking instant coffee and making it really good.
Really? So it's not like the Folgers. No, Charles never has a second cup of coffee at home.
There was the thing about instant coffee is really as good as the coffee you're putting into it. And so with Folgers, with like any of those, like,
what's the deal with Folgers? Let's get real here.
With any of those like really kind of standard instant coffee brands, you're not using high quality coffee. You are it's cheap coffee, first of all, and it is prepared in a way that makes it cheap instant coffee. And so you're not starting with a good base product. And so the final product like can't be good because you're not starting with good ingredients. And so nowadays what's really, really cool are there's a huge influx in like roasters and different coffee companies experimenting with making instant coffee using much higher quality coffee, which, surprise, ends up with a much better result in the instant side of it. And so there's some really, really good stuff out there nowadays.
Is there like an annoying drink that people can order when they're, especially if it's like me waiting in line with firemen behind me?
Sure.
Let's say it would just hold up the line. That would make a barista go, oh, please stop.
Ooh, that's tricky. It really depends person to person. I think no matter what, if you order something in like if you're just nice about it, which sounds really, really simple, if you're just nice about it, I don't think anything is really annoying. I think it's just about kindness.
Just
However,
be excellent to each other.
Just be nice to each other. But there is there's some moments like if you are a coffee bar that serves pour overs, which you need a dedicated barista for, like you have to stand there. It's probably gonna take like 4 minutes no matter what. If you're in the middle of like the Sunday rush, like it's brunch time, it's like everyone's in getting their coffee, and you have like 3 people order pour overs when you have a line of drinks, and then there's a line behind them. I won't say it's annoying. I will say it is like it is a process.
Wouldn't you just tell them, okay, but this is going to take a while?
Exactly. I'm like, you're gonna be standing there, so just prepare for that. Less annoying, more just like brace yourself for the amount of time this is gonna take.
Is there some other coffee shop etiquette people should know about? Is there anything you wish people would and wouldn't do at a coffee shop?
Ooh, I would say I think one thing that and this is kind of hard because it very much differs, first of all, like shop to shop, but also like culturally, like this is very different in different countries. But like paying attention to how the drinks are being served once they're made. There are coffee shops that will, like, you sit down at your table and then they will walk the drink out to you. But then there are also coffee shops where they're just going to be calling out the drinks and you need to be like listening for them. And so I think it's kind of a lot to take in, but I think as you're entering a coffee shop, just kind of being like cognizant of whether you're seeing the drinks being delivered or called out is something that can be good to get in the habit of doing, just because I think one of my least favorite things, and it's like the most frustrating because it's like, I want you to get what you ordered. I want it to be fresh. I want it to be delicious. And like, I want you to have a good time. It can be so frustrating to be in like a really busy day, to have a beautiful drink made on the counter. You've called it out like 18 times. You have, at this point, you have no idea who ordered it. And so it's just sitting there like degrading. And then finally, like 10 minutes later, someone kind of comes up and is like, oh, is this like my drink? And you're like, well, yes. Do you want me to, like, I should remake it at this point? It's kind of one of those scenarios. So that's something
I'll pop it in the microwave.
Yeah, I'll toss it in the microwave back there for you. So that's something that I think would be like my advice to folks, is like, if you want
you know what they're doing? They're busy on their phones looking at TikTok videos.
Sometimes.
They don't know that their coffee is ready.
It is one of my favorite things. It is kind of sometimes genuinely hilarious to me, and I don't fault anyone for this because I know I've done it before. But it's like when you're calling out a drink, and it's like I'll see the person, like I know this drink is for them. They'll be like on their phones, and I'm like yelling at them, and it's just like not registering. And then it's kind of like they'll like jolt out of it and be like, "Oh, is that mine?" I'm like, "Yes, this is. Please take it."
Dude, you don't mind people just hanging out for like hours on end at a coffee shop? That's kind of the thing about cafes.
That's kind of the thing about them. I do it myself. I think the biggest thing is just like kind of be mindful of like, if it's a crazy busy day, like how long are you taking up like real estate, and how much have you paid to kind of take up that real estate? Like I would say kind of a good practice is if you're going to be there for more like an hour and a half, like maybe order a pastry or like a second drink or something. But like, coffee shops are meant to be a place of community, and like that's really important, I think.
Yeah, order something.
Yeah. Or at least, if they're busy, kind of pay your way. But if they're not busy, like I would not worry about it. Like, no, I'll tell you from a barista's perspective, like we often just like don't notice. Like you could be there the entire shift that I'm working, and I like just will be too busy to even notice that it's the same person sitting there.
Do you get very many tea drinkers come into, what do you think of tea drinkers?
I'm a tea drinker myself. I can't. I'm a big fan. I think what's really cool nowadays too is in a lot of specialty coffee shops, people are developing really good tea programs as well. So it's like, okay, if we're going to serve really good coffee, why aren't we also serving really good tea? And
do you usually serve that? Is it tea bags or is it loose leaf tea, or how does a coffee shop deal with that? I've never ordered tea.
It depends on the cafe. I've worked in both. I would say tea bags are easier for sure. They're faster, easier to control. There is something so lovely about loose leaf tea though. So you'll see both. I think it very much depends on the cafe.
I notice you keep saying cafe and I keep saying coffee shop. I think I should be saying cafe, shouldn't I?
You can say either. In the nice thing about in the US at least is those like basically mean the exact same thing, and you can use them interchangeably. I've traveled to countries that those are not the same thing, and I had to learn that very, very quickly because I realized what I was looking for was not at all what I thought it was.
Like a cafe is like
sit down and like it's like you're gonna have like a menu and stuff, and I was like, no, I just want a coffee.
Just please. A cup of coffee. Does it drive crazy when you hear people say espresso?
Not as much as it used to. I kind of let that one go. I had to let that one bounce off of me at some point.
Yeah, you're not gonna die on that hill.
Nope, not at all. There's better hills to die on for sure.
Well, what do you want people to experience most from going to having you as their barista?
I think what I want people to experience most is, I think something we talked about a little bit earlier when we were talking about like what my short form content like does, I suppose. I think I want people to feel like safe, I suppose. I think that's the best word that I've kind of come up with, and I think a lot of that stems from the fact that very early on, like in high school, when I first kind of like discovered a coffee shop or like what it could be, it was a place that I went to like almost every single day. I would meet my friends there. I would go study there and work there. And it truly became this like third place where I felt comfortable to just kind of like exist in. And that was a very like special thing for me at that time in my life. You know, it was like this very comfortable, like just it was like the exact same every time I went in, and that was very important. And so nowadays as a barista, like it's always my hope to be able to kind of like create that, at least in like a small way, for other people. You know, I want to create a space and like a shop where they feel comfortable like having conversations, or they feel comfortable just hanging out by themselves, or just like somewhere that's comfortable. It's surrounded by people. It's serving like really excellent beverages. And it's just something you can count on at the end of the day. Like that's really the goal within my hospitality ethos.
Wow, and your videos totally reflect that too.
That's the hope. That's the hope, at least.
What's your goals, long-term goals, 5-10 years down the line?
Yeah, good question. I always say that someday I'm just going to disappear off the internet and go write creative fiction under a pseudonym. And no one's going to ever hear from me again. No, but
don't let that happen.
We'll see. Every year I get closer and closer. But what kind
of fiction do you want to write?
Oh, I want to write like science fiction and fantasy. Oh, cool. That's the end goal. No, but I'm planning on continuing Morgandrinkscoffee for a lot longer. We have some kind of bigger projects in the works right now that are not super real yet. They're all kind of like, you know, hypothetical ideas that we're trying to make happen. So more. What does that involve? It involves
you can tell me. Nobody listens to this.
Okay. Well, we are working on formulating kind of like a show idea, like something that would go into more like traditional media. And it would be kind of an expansion on kind of everything I'm doing now. Like it would be like entertainment and education all wrapped around coffee, like kind of in the same way that like really the food industry and chefs have figured out how to talk about food in a way that's really entertaining. It's like we can do that with coffee too. The information exists. So we're working on that. I will
You could be the new Gordon Ramsay, except not Gordon Ramsay. The total opposite.
I'll be the opposite of Gordon Ramsay. But like we want to do something with that. I'll be competing again, so that's like a pretty big part of this year. And then on top of that, nowadays I also work in content marketing for a pretty big roaster in the US. And so I really love being able to do like stuff that is from my degree with in another job. And so I've kind of got these 3 jobs, being barista, Morgandrinkscoffee, and like content marketing right now. And I love doing all those 3. So I'm excited to see where they kind of like take me. And my hope is to be able to continue in kind of all these routes simultaneously moving forward.
Well, that's exciting, and it sounds exhausting to me.
I like being busy, I'll tell you that much.
Morgan, it was great talking to you.
Great talking to you too. This was so much fun.